Research shows that people who follow a leader because they want to are 40% more productive than if they're following a leader because they have to.
Want to follow. How do you become a
Mhm.
high impact leader that high impact individuals and high impact team players want to follow? So it's kind of like a
Mm.
CEO of 8,000 people telling me how much he got out of the book that I wrote for the entry level person. And again, it's because it's filled with principles. Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue-Collar Leadership Podcast today. Or if you're actually watching this episode on the Blue-Collar Leadership YouTube channel, thank you as well. So Ria and I are excited today. We're gonna give you an overview of basically the Blue-Collar Leadership series books. And this is 2026 is the 10-year anniversary of me writing the first Blue-Collar Leadership series books, Ria.
Whoop, whoop.
Well, I'm glad you're on here with me. I always love doing these episodes with you, and I think people like listening to both of us chat sometimes, especially when you do those things to me you do sometimes where everybody gets to laugh.
I don't do anything to you.
All right. So what we're going to do, folks, a lot of people don't realize now we have 8 books in this series. 7 of them are mine, and Ria threw one in. The last one, number 8, was actually Ria's. So we're going to talk about these, and to give you an overview, a lot of times we have clients, Ria, or people that we're just starting to talk to. They come across our content and they want to know, well, where do I start? Right.
Right. Sure.
So
it's a roadmap.
Do what?
They need a roadmap, right? They need a roadmap for, okay, what's first? Because it can be overwhelming when you start any leadership development program, much less one with, like you said, you've got 8 books in the series. So that's a lot.
Yep. So as you listen today, if you're a leader, you need to keep listening. If you're an entry-level frontline worker, you need to keep listening, because we're going to talk about how these books can help either group, the top leader or the entry-level worker, and also everyone in between at different levels of leadership or those in a support role. We'll be sharing how these different books can be utilized by different groups. So a little bit of something for everyone. And also, we'll talk about some books. We'll talk about how the leader uses this book. And then at the same exact book, we'll talk about how maybe an entry-level person uses the same book. So we'll kind of give an overview like that. But we're going to start out with the one that is intended to be a roadmap or a guide or a blueprint, so to speak, for the top-level leader who may hear us speak or discovers this podcast or some other way finds us, maybe on our bluecollarleadership.com website. And then they dive in and want to know, what do they do? So blue-collar leadership and culture, the 5 components for building high-performance teams. That's the first one I'm going to talk about, Ria.
Yeah, I like that because, when you wrote that book, it really is intended to be kind of that roadmap, that how to implement leadership development from the organization from top to bottom. And I'm a practical person, so I really like tools that are like, okay, this is how to do it, not just theory, vague leadership sounds great, but how do we actually implement it at every level in the organization? So I really like that you created this resource, kind of that overview, that roadmap.
Yep. And this book, again, the intended audience is a top level leader, business owner or CEO type person. But again, a lot of people at all different levels get value out of this book. And I will even say entry-level people can get value from this book, because they can understand what the big picture is that a company may be doing or that it should be doing. I know I talk to a lot of people. Before I talk a little bit about it from a frame of reference of the top leader, I want to just mention, I've had people who are in entry-level roles who value my content. I'll tell them about this book, and I'll say, hey, the way you can use this book is maybe you're interested in leadership development and personal growth, and you wish the company was doing it, but they're not doing it. I'll tell these entry-level folks, you need to read this book so you understand the big picture. But then also, maybe you can gift it or influence the top leader to actually read it. Maybe you won't have to give it to them. Maybe you can talk them into buying it on their own. But if you're serious, buy it for them. Tell them you read it. Tell them about some of the other books you've read, and then give them that book to try to motivate and inspire them. And that's where people on the bottom of the org chart can lead up the org chart, actually all the way to the top, because we've had people at the bottom who've actually inspired their leaders to to dive in and go down that path. So that's one way an entry level person can use this book to help initiate cultural transformation in their organization. They got to get the top leaders to buy into it. And maybe you don't start with a top leader. Maybe you start with your direct boss. Maybe you can influence them and they can influence the top leader or something like that. All different ways you can do it.
Sure.
But again, the purpose, wrote this book. Ria and I had spoken in Louisville, Kentucky. Been quite a while ago, hadn't it, Ria?
Yeah, it's been several years.
So we were speaking there, and we were actually speaking on one of the books we're going to talk to you about today, Blue-Collar Leadership and Supervision. We'll get to that one in a little bit later, but that's what we were speaking on. And I didn't have a Blue-Collar Leadership and Culture book at that time. And we got done. A guy named Tim McGordy, he owns 2 different businesses, one in Idaho, one in Washington. And he was fired up after that 4-hour session with us. And he started reaching out and calling and all that sort of stuff, which I invited everyone to do and invite you to do if you're listening or watching.
Sure.
334-728-4143. I'm always open, but I ain't always available. You can reach out. I'm happy to chat for free about leadership and personal growth. But he started calling, emailing, and I started answering his questions. He got gung-ho. He bought a lot of books for his team, brought us out to speak at both locations in both states. But what I realized during that process, Ria, was we need a book for this guy. This guy being, a general term, meaning the top leader who's gung-ho about cultural transformation once they hear us speak. So that's what this book is. And sometimes people read it and they think this sounds like a sales book because we're talking about all of our other books within this book, but it's not a sales book. This book is intended for the top leader who wants to transform their organization and doesn't really know how to do it. So it teaches them what to do, how to do it, why they should do it. And then throughout different chapters, not every chapter, but a lot of chapters, at the very end of the chapter, after I talk about whatever I'm talking about, if we've got a book that will help them do what I talked about in that chapter, I reference the website address to the page for that book and that content. So now once they get through the book, now they can go back through the book, look for all these links to our other books. And now they got like we said, it's a roadmap to all the content that they've got to go somehow teach and use to develop their workforce and their team.
Yeah, I mean, it really is just offering those resources. Again, this is a tool intended for that top level leader who's like, I'm bought in. I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to change the culture. How? It's a how-to. It's literally a how-to.
Yep. And if you're a podcast listener, or maybe this is your first one, there. Let me see. Episode 179 is actually the podcast where you can. Podcast series. You can go listen to a 30-part series on this book, but I highly recommend get the book, read a chapter, listen to an episode, read a chapter, listen to an episode. That's what a lot of people do to learn best, because I'm not reading the book in the episode. I'm talking about other stuff. So to get the good content, very structured, you need the book. And then to get some additional content to help you understand the book, listen to that related podcast episode. So that's one place you can go dive in and to get into that. And in the book, Ria, there's, just as an example, as we kick off into the other books, there's three chapters in a row in there under the leadership development section. And that book, you and I come up with a transformation equation, and then I base the book off of that transformation equation. And leadership development is the first component in the equation. And there's 3 chapters in there in a row. One of them says the title is Developing High Impact Individuals. The next one is Developing High Impact Team Players. And then the next one is Developing High Impact Leaders. And so that's an example for each one of those chapters. I got a book for that. Developing High Impact Individuals is the book we're about to talk about that I reference at the end of that chapter. And that is Blue-Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. And so that was my first book. That's the one that I initially wrote. That one and Supervision, I wrote those 10 years ago, and we released those. So it's been 10 years since that book come out, Blue-Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. And it's by far, it's been the bestseller. I mean, we sell probably more of those books than we do all of our other 34 books combined. We sell a lot of those books. So that book on the opposite end of the spectrum, the intended audience for blue-collar leadership leading from the front lines, it's intended for the entry-level blue-collar worker. Doesn't matter what industry they're in, doesn't matter what age they are. It's for that person who's in an entry-level position, who wants to excel.
One reason I think that that's important is because there's not a lot of leadership development books for that population, right? I mean, there's a lot of leadership books for like the CEO. There's not a lot of leadership materials available for someone who is working on the front lines. And leadership at that level it's not any different really than for the CEO. Leadership starts with self, right? Yep. But that book, Blue-Collar Leadership Leading from the Front Lines, really is about how do I lead myself well? And that is something that the frontline worker absolutely can benefit from, but that's something that the CEO of a company or the manager or the team leader, that's something that they need to know too, because until we can lead ourselves well, we're not able to lead other people very effectively.
You're exactly right. So I always encourage the top leaders, start with the Blue-Collar Leadership and Culture book, just to get a big high-level overview of what cultural transformation means, what it's like, what to expect, what to do, all that stuff I talked about. But then I tell them always start with this book. Everybody from top to bottom, including the CEO or the top leader, they need to go through Blue-Collar Leadership Leading from the Front Lines, because it again, it's intended for the entry-level workforce, but it applies to everyone at every level within an organization, but because it's based on principles, and these principles apply to everyone. So if I'm going to be the top leader and I say, hey, my workforce needs to know what's in this book, I want them to get aligned with these principles and these concepts. Well, if that, I need to be modeling those concepts, which means I need to learn what's in that book too, and I need to be trying to apply that in my own life, regardless of my title. So that's how that book's intended to be used by a leader, is to go out and develop the people, everybody. But the way it's intended for the individual, the entry-level person, is that book is for you to use to develop yourself, whether your leaders are developing themselves and anyone else or not. Your company may not even be doing leadership development. You might have discovered this podcast and you're getting gung-ho and you're trying to separate yourself. Blue-Collar Leadership Leading from the Front Lines, it's going to help you become more promotable, high-impact leaders. Those leaders worth following, they're going to want to promote you if you're applying what's in this book. They're going to want to give you raises. They want to give you new opportunities. And the thing is, if you're applying what's in this book, you're going to want all those things and you're going to deserve all those things. And high-impact leaders are going to know it. And one other thing that's going to happen is people outside of your organization that you come across or you interact with, they're going to know you're different, especially if they're high-impact leaders. So you're going to have more options, and there's going to be people who want to steal you away. And if there's high impact leaders in your company, developing people in their company, they got to know, they got to lead, they got to train you so well you have options to leave, but they want to lead you so well that you want to stay.
Right.
That's the challenge, right, Ria?
That is always the challenge. Yeah, but absolutely great resource. Again, everyone in the organization needs to know, how do I lead me more effectively?
And just to share real quick, I had a Mike Huff. He's a friend and a client of mine and Ria's. He's the CEO of GAT Airline Ground Support throughout the United States and Canada. I think last time I talked to Mike, he's got about 8,000 employees, if I remember right, and
big team.
Team members on his team. And he read Blue-Collar Leadership Leading from the Front Lines. That's the book that caused us to get to know him. He was wanting to develop 500 supervisors, and he thought that book was intended for supervisor training. And he read it and realized, no, this is for the entry-level person, but everybody needs it, like I said a moment ago. And he called me, reached out, and we talked within a few days of him reading that book. And Mike's just an awesome guy. He's a high-impact leader, like Ria and I talk about. And what he talked about the most was how much he got out of the book. The CEO of 8,000 people telling me how much he got out of the book that I wrote for the entry-level person. And again, it's because it's filled with principles. So, and then he bought a lot of our other books, had us come in and speak. He actually got the Culture book and had us come in and speak to 120 of his top leaders from around the U.S. and Canada. So that's just a great example. So you ready to move into another one, Ria?
Yeah, and I just wanted to stop here and say, for those who are listening to the audio, just a reminder that they can download sample chapters, or the first several chapters of all of these books that we're talking about. at bluecollarleadership.com/download. And there's no email required. You're not going to have to put in an email or a credit card or anything like that. It truly is just a free download, a PDF. And you're welcome to download that and forward that on, pass that on if you know of others who could benefit.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of content there that's free if you add
Mhm.
up all of it collectively from all the different books. All these books we're talking about today, there's some samples of them there, and some of our other books that we're not talking about today, there's also samples there. So thanks for sharing that, Ria, and it is a great resource. And I would also share anyone just we're not really here to talk about book study today, but
Mhm.
we write these books so that they can be used for book studies. They're 30 chapters, 3 pages each. And you can go to bluecollarleadership.com/book study training. Watch
Mhm.
a free 45-minute video of Ria and I teaching that method. And there's also a video on that site, on that web page, of someone who's been doing it for a while, and you can watch me interview that person and hear what they're actually doing and the results they actually get. And they're not a formal authority leader in that role when they were leading the book studies. They're an entry-level person. That's just awesome, Mr. Jim
Yeah.
McEwen. So you can go check that out. You'll see several, I think there's 4 other testimonials from other people who do book studies. The reason I'm telling you about it now is if you're listening to this, you want to experiment with this content, with the concept of a book study, go download some of those chapters from the books, because you can, all these first 5 books I'm talking about today, you can get the first 5 chapters. So that's 25 chapters you can get from these first 5 books that I'm talking about today on this episode. And you can experiment with facilitating a book study with those free chapters and just see what it feels like, what it looks like, that sort of thing. All right, Ria, ready to move into book number 3 today?
Yeah, let's do it.
Blue-Collar Leadership and Teamwork. And the subtitle is 30 Traits of High Impact Players.
Mm-hmm.
So you notice we're building up. We started with an entry-level worker, the book Blue-Collar Leadership for the entry-level worker. Now we're developing how do I lead myself well, which is Blue-Collar Leadership. But Ria, I've seen a lot. You've probably seen a lot. A lot of times you have people who can lead themselves well, who can do a phenomenal job by themselves, but sometimes they don't work well with others. You ever notice that?
Yeah, and that's really the audience who can benefit the most from this book, right? Is the characteristics that help us be more effective as team players, interacting with others, right? The It's interesting, but that's where most of our conflicts in the workplace come from, are people working with other people. And so many different personalities, so many different characteristics. There's just, it's kind of a melting pot when you throw everybody in there together, hopefully working towards a common goal and one mission. But how, we've often talked about the cliche, there is no I in team. Well, there is an I in team, because every team is made up of individuals, and every individual has influence, either positive or negative, right? And it just takes one toxic person to derail the growth of that team, or the success of that team. And so that's why it's so important to be developing people on the character side of things, not just able to do the job, but developing who they are and helping them grow as a person. Because when people kind of grow together, they start to grow together.
That's right. They grow individually as people, but then they grow together as a team while they're going through the
Yes.
process, right?
Yeah. And that really helps people get on the same page. These books, one thing they do is they give people the language to talk about leadership among themselves. And then it's easier to help everyone hold each other accountable in a positive way. And so I love the characteristics. It was interesting because when you came up with the outline for this book, I had already written my book, Leadership Gems, and there was definitely some overlap. So it was interesting to see that you and I both felt, when we're talking about characteristics in terms of leadership, we identified a lot of the same ones were the most important.
Oh yeah, the interior of the books not really overlap except for what we're talking about, but the
Right.
titles were almost identical, and I didn't
Yeah.
even remember that you had done that, or whichever one of us done it first. I think you had done it first, and then later, I was like, man, these chapters titles are a lot of the same ones you had in your book, but the contents, I didn't look at
The
your book when I
contents,
wrote it. I
right.
just come up with whatever that meant to me, but yeah, those 2 books are complementary to each other without a doubt, with a different frame of reference,
Sure.
slightly.
Sure.
So blue collar leadership, leading from the front lines. How do I lead myself well? Blue collar leadership and teamwork. Now that's another layer of leadership. Now, how do I work effectively with other people? I can build trust. They can build trust. You want your teams to build trust. And what I'm talking about here, Ria, is I tell people it's kind of like a kit. Blue collar leadership and culture. That's the top book. Then you got blue collar leadership, leading from the front lines, how to lead myself well. Then this book I'm talking about now, blue collar leadership and teamwork, how to work effectively with others. Then if you're building high impact individuals and high impact team players, then the next book I'm about to talk about, blue collar leadership and supervision, unleash your team's potential. That's how do you become a leader that those two groups of high impact people want to follow? How do you become a high impact leader that high impact individuals and high impact team players want to follow? So it's kind of like a system in a way. It's a kit. I call it just a kit, for leadership development. If you want to grow and develop people to move up in an organization, if you want to, stack your pipeline with future leaders so that when a leader moves up or they move on, you got another leader ready to plug in and launch them like a rocket. You got to be developing those folks while they're in the front line positions. And again, Frontlines book is for the entry-level individuals and also everybody else. The teamwork book is automatically intended for everyone at every level, especially the support folks, the engineering teams, the safety team, the lean people, all those kind of folks, the leadership folks. But again, also the entry-level people. It's a systematic approach to development. Some of the chapters in this book, again, you can go to bluecollarleadership.com/download, read the first 5 chapters, but you'll see every chapter in this book starts with the word be. The first one is be growth oriented. That's what you got to do. You got to be growth oriented if you want to be a high impact team player. You got to be growing and learning and going and all that sort of stuff. Be trustworthy, be responsible, be approachable, be all kind of things you wish everybody on your team already was. It's just helping you understand as an individual, these things I need to do to look in the mirror and take responsibility and be this type of person.
Sure.
In the workplace. And also, Ria, need to mention that these books are all formatted for leading book studies. They're easy to read for blue collar folks like me that don't like to read. I always tell people that. Been reading every day for 18 years, but I know most people don't like to read, especially blue collar folks. Some of them love to read. I've figured that out too, Ria. A lot of them actually do like to read if it's something they feel like reading, feel like it's worth reading. But they're formatted with 30 chapters, 3 pages each. So you can cover a chapter, even if you're slow like me, 6 to 7 minutes. If you're a speed reader like Ria, probably 2 or 3 minutes. But that ain't me. I'm the 6 to 7 minute category. And so they're easy to read. So I want to move on to the next book, unless you have something else on the teamwork book, Ria.
Nope.
So the next book is Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision, Unleash Your Team's Potential. And a lot of people, Ria, a lot of companies that bring us in, they want to start with this book. Even though I don't recommend it, that's the one they want to start with because they want to develop their leaders. The reason their leaders need development is because they don't lead themselves well and they don't work well with others first. Those foundational books that we just talked about already. But let's say they've kind of had that type content. They are doing that. They are in a formal leadership role, formal authority role. This book helps them learn how to lead in a way that people want to follow. What's that stat about 40%, Ria?
Research shows that people who follow a leader because they want to are 40% more productive than if they're following a leader because they have to. Because someone who follows a leader only because they have to is only going to do what they have to. And, that's a way to quantify how much disengagement of the workforce is holding you back in terms of production and output and success of the organization. If you think about if people are only giving 40% of what they're capable of doing, or they're only giving 60% of what they're capable of doing, that's 40% of just untapped potential for your organization without hiring people, without onboarding new people, without costing any more in terms of salaries. And that's why this type of development is so important, because most people become disengaged because of their relationship with their direct supervisor. And in fact, the number one reason people quit a company is the relationship with their immediate supervisor. So we have to be doing development at all levels, not just of the supervisors, but also of the team members, right? Everyone needs this type of development because that helps them understand the organization values them as a person, not just as a pair of hands, but also helping them understand that if all of us focus on ourselves instead of always blaming somebody else, then we can get somewhere so much quicker.
Yep, you said a good thing that I want to stress again, make sure everybody was paying attention. And they may have got confused because we were saying if somebody follows a leader because they want to versus have to, they're going to be 40% more productive. And you can't do but 8 hours work in 8 hours. You can't.
Right.
Let's say 10 to round it off, so I can explain what you said in a simple way. Let's say you can't do more than 10 hours work in 10 hours. I mean, if you do 100% all you can do, whatever that is, in 10 hours, you work 10 hours. So you said something about that 40%, and then you went back to 60%. And that's exactly right. Because if I'm holding back that 40%, I'm operating actually at 60%.
Right.
But leaders who don't understand what we're talking about, they see that 60%, they think that's 100% because that's all they ever get. But that's still 60%. And it's really less than that because usually nobody's actually doing 100%, even when they think they're doing 100%. Sure. Maybe they at 90 or whatever, but keeping it simple, that's true. And I've seen this, I've validated this. I think it's greater than that a lot of times, but that's the average. That's what the research shows. The average is 40%. So that's pretty powerful. So this book, because a lot of people start with this book, whether it's leaders wanting to bring us in to talk about this book first, or whether it's people who just find our content and they're a leader and they start with this supervision book because they think it's for the leaders. They need to start with that one. I actually wrote this book. The first 15 chapters are really focused on myself as a leader. How do I lead me in a way that allows me to lead others well? So the first half, I wrote it that way because, again, it may be the book that somebody starts with. So they need some personal development as a leader. But it's in the context of you are a leader of other people. So how do you lead yourself well as a leader of other people? And then the second half is, now how do I actually lead people well in a way that causes them to want to follow, in a way that causes them to want to give me that 40%? Because they don't have to. They don't have to give me that 40%. I have to earn that 40%, and then they give it to me. They don't have to. They have to want to, right?
Sure.
I mean, there's chapters in there like leading with questions. That's one. How to help your team win, different things like that. But leading with questions, there's quite a few chapters in there about questions because high impact leaders lead with questions, not directions. It's not about being a dictator. It's about being a leader of people, not a manager of people. And so it's a great book. And it is a leadership book intended for formal authority leaders, but you need the foundation of those other two books to get the most out of this book, if that makes sense. You can get a lot out of it by itself, but you won't get as near as much out of it if you build it on top of those other two foundational books that we talked about already. Ready for the next one, Ria?
Let's do it.
So the next book this one doesn't really appeal to everyone, but a lot of people are interested in it when they hear about it. But it's Blue-Collar Kaizen, Leading Lean and Lean Teams. And that's my background. My background's manufacturing, although we support all kind of blue-collar industries and white-collar organizations these days. But my background's actually manufacturing and process improvement. So if you're familiar with lean manufacturing or lean construction, you already know what I'm talking about. If not, lean is just simply a methodical and intentional approach to applying principles to increase effectiveness and efficiency within processes. And I led teams. I logged over 11,000 hours leading 6 to 10 person teams. Every week, get a new team and a new mission. A lot of times in different places. I may be in one state one week, another state the next week, and another different type of products, different kind of environment. Everything's different most of the time in some kind of way. And that's where I logged 11,000 hours applying all the stuff that's in our other books and learning to apply it. And that book is really intended for those. The perfect audience for that is someone who's responsible for leading process improvement teams.
Sure.
Teams of people, how to get them to buy in and how to get them to sustain the gain, which is the two greatest obstacles within lean, trying to get people to buy into improving processes and then trying to get them to sustain those gains so that you realize those benefits moving forward, but not just this week, but next month and next year. And you just keep going unless you come up with a better idea.
Right. Love it. Yeah, and that's one of the things that's a skill set in and of itself, right? Not just leadership of self or leadership of other people from from a position of authority, but leading a team, bringing a group of people together into a team, right? That's an entirely different skill set. So I like that this book really focuses on that leadership of the team. It's not really talking about the lean tools in and of themselves. It's really it's about leading those teams of people.
Yeah, that's a key point. It's if you know about lean, this book's nothing to do with the lean tools, except for the stories I share relate to the lean
Right.
tools. But it's not teaching you the lean tools, not teaching you how to implement the lean tools. It's all about engaging the people in the process. And again, like all of my books, they're filled with principles. Someone who's never done lean, maybe who is never going to do lean, could benefit from this book because it's full of principles on how to engage people, a team of people, and get them to buy in and sustain whatever the mission is. So it's all about leading teams of people, where a lot of leadership books are, it's about leading teams, but it's really about how to engage one-on-one with individuals as a leader, how to lead, motivate, and inspire these people. But my Kaizen book, Blue-Collar Kaizen, is all about, again, how do you do it with a team of people, especially if it's dealing with change, because that's what lean is all about. Lean is all about leading people through change they don't want. A lot of times they
Changes
don't
they don't
like me.
like.
What's
Yep.
that?
Changes they don't like, changes they don't want.
Exactly right. And they're bringing someone in from the outside to lead a team through process improvement, to make changes that, again, a lot of people don't want. A lot of times the workers don't want it. A lot of times their leaders don't want it. But there's a leader somewhere at the top, usually bringing someone in like me back in those days that's got to get the organization to improve. And they had to bring someone, a lot of times, most of the time, they had to bring someone from the outside to really accelerate it. And that's what I did from 2005 to 2012. That's where those 11,000 hours got logged and got amazing results. So a lot of people, again, they just love that book because it's just filled with leadership stories, leadership examples of real world interactions and getting phenomenal results. That's what all these principles in all these books will allow you to do as a leader, is to get phenomenal results in your life, at home and at work. We ready to move to this next set of books, Ria?
We sure are.
So the next set of books completely different from these first books in the way that they're formatted. So Ria and I come up with another concept. We call it Blue-Collar Leadership Toolbox Tips. I know a lot of the folks out there have toolbox talks, Ria. They call it. So they start calling these books Blue-Collar Leadership Toolbox Talks, but the name of them is actually Toolbox Tips because they're full of tips. But you share them a lot of times in the Toolbox Talk meetings. So so you want to share about how these books are formatted?
Yeah. So the inspiration behind this concept and these books, specifically the toolbox tips ones, were for those clients of ours or those who are using the blue collar leadership books and materials, and to keep the drip going, right? To keep the growth going. And it's maybe you don't have time every day for a book study session or a podcast listening session, or maybe you don't have 15 to 30 minutes for one of our online academy videos, but you have just a couple minutes to slide in some of the leadership to just keep that top of mind, right? Keeping these principles top of mind so that we all just are reminded of them and encouraged by them, inspired by them. And so, yeah, these toolbox tips can be covered in approximately 45 seconds to a minute. There's just a series of, well, each book has a different theme, and I'll let you speak to that in a moment. But relative to the way they're formatted is each book has a very specific toolbox tip itself, a little bit about it, an example of a good example or a positive example of someone applying this concept, and what not to do, what you shouldn't do in terms of applying this principle. And then it's got a good quote that kind of relates, and then just a discussion prompt. If someone wanted to take a moment to do some discussion around this concept, they could, or they don't have to. You and I know that a lot of our clients are using these, again, for just kick off a safety meeting or kick off a weekly or even quarterly team meeting, right? Just keep that drip going, making sure that we as an organization are saying, hey, this is important. And it's so important that we are going to start our meetings with this concept.
Yep, good stuff, Ria. Great explanation, and that is what they're intended for. That leadership drip. When we come into a
Mm-hmm.
room, we're gonna spray them with a fire hose, right? It's gonna be
Sure.
an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, sometimes multiple days that we speak to people, and we call it. We tell them we spraying you with the fire hose. You're gonna get so much stuff, you're gonna miss most of it. But what transforms organizations is the leadership drip. That's why we come up with these. There's 3 volumes currently in this series.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of them has 60 tips in it. The first volume, the subtitle of this book for the first one is 60 Micro Lessons to Maximize Your Influence. And these 60 lessons in volume 1 actually relate to blue collar leadership leading from the front lines, those 30 chapters, and then blue collar leadership and teamwork, 30 traits of high impact players, those 30 chapters. It's not a duplicate of the content though. It relates to a key principle from each one of those chapters in each one of
Mm-hmm.
those 2 books. And then I do exactly what you said. I formatted it that way that you described to take it to a deeper level, but also to use it for that drip. Because when we're in a room, what we're challenged to do is the same thing you as a leader are challenged to do it. And it is provoke thought, raise awareness. That's why you want to use these tips constantly to provoke thought, not all day, once a day, once a week. Somebody needs to be doing something at least once a week. Somebody needs to be
Mm-hmm.
provoking thought, raising awareness around a leadership tip at least once a week. And I see on the screen, Ria, you got bluecollarleadership.com/implement
Yep.
scrolling. And that's a great web page you designed and created it for those people who either want to grow and develop themselves and or their team. Either way, they can go there, they can dive into that page, and there's a lot of links on there that's going to get them to some stuff's free, some stuff's paid. It just depends on what do you want to do, how deep do
Yeah.
you want to go. So volume
Absolutely.
2 in the Blue Collar Leadership Toolbox Tip series, it's also titled 60 Micro Lessons to Maximize Your Influence. But this book is based on 60 principles, tips, and it was a hard thing to do because I had to go back and forth between the first tips books. I want to make sure this one didn't duplicate what was in the first
Right.
one. But this one's actually based on key tips and principles, or I should say key principles from my very first book I wrote back in 2014 called Defining Influence. Increasing your
Mm-hmm.
influence increases your options. So we teach leadership is influence, as John Maxwell says, nothing more, nothing less. And that's why these books are all these principles in all of our books are to help you increase your influence. When you increase your influence, your life gets better, your pay gets better, your job gets better, everything gets better with more influence. You have more options and opportunities, and that's what people want, Ria.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then the third book in this toolbox tips series that we have at the moment, anyway, is based on communication. And those tips are directly inspired from my book, Straight Talk: The Power of Effective Communication. Again, just top of mind, keeping these principles on how to have better relationships and better interactions, better communications within our team. Starting off, every day or every week with one of these little tips. An individual could do that on their own, or you could start off a meeting by reviewing one of these toolbox tips. So again, just one of those ways that we can leverage the power of micro lesson learning, because we as people overestimate the impact of an event and we underestimate the power of the process, right? And growth, culture transformation, leadership development is far more impacted by a process implemented over time than a one-day event on the calendar. It's just one of those things. It's like exercise, right? Doing it once is good, but it's not as effective as doing it a little bit every single day.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Ria. And you said something that made me want to make sure I remind everybody about these Blue Collar Leadership Toolbox Tips books. Please do not read them like a book.
Yeah, yeah.
They are
Yeah, they're
not.
not intended to do that.
They're not meant for you to sit down and turn pages, till you can see how fast you can finish it. You're not going to like that. You may get a little value out of that, but you're not going to like it like that. That's not what it's meant to be. Even if you get this book for yourself, read only one tip a week.
Yeah.
For 60 weeks. That'll last you over a year. One tip book, right? That's over a
Right.
year. It's the same thing, if you lead your team through this at work, maybe you kick off a safety meeting on Monday mornings each week somewhere, whatever company you're in. it's over a year's worth of content to keep that
Mm-hmm.
drip going. That's the way it's intended, because it's going to seem redundant. It's going to seem just clunky. It ain't going to seem right if you just turn pages, go from tip 1 to tip 2. Say, hey, I read 15 tips today. That you may get some nugget if you're a leadership nerd like me and you like diving into that stuff and soaking it up. You just can't help it. But that's not how it's intended to be
It won't be
read.
most effective. Yeah.
Yeah, it won't be most effective. And again, it may make you not like the book because that ain't how it's meant to be read. So, Ria, I forgot to share this. You might have touched on it, but we didn't really say it specifically. But I want to share with everyone the first 5 books I shared.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a 7.5 hour video course on each one of those. Blue-Collar Leadership Academy.
Yeah.
And anyone listening, it's scrolling on the screen now if you're watching, but anyone listening can go to bluecollarleadershipacademy.com and learn more about these. And again, these books are those first 5, they're available in paperback, audio, and ebooks.
And a couple of them are also available in Spanish.
Yeah, Blue-Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines, is available in Spanish. And Blue-Collar Leadership and Teamwork, 30 Traits of High Impact Players, is available in Spanish, those 2. And I would say the tips books are only available in paperback. They're not audio or ebook.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of the way they're intended to be used. And so I think we about covered everything, Ria. Is there anything else? Because this podcast, this episode was really more of a highlight and an overview and an introduction. It's episode 499. We got episode 500 of these podcasts coming up after this one. And it's been 8 years, Ria, I've been doing these podcasts. And I met a lot of people because of them.
Yeah, that's important. It's pretty cool just to see how, as a brand, it has grown. Just providing the resources for leaders and those on their team that they want to develop. And then now we have the online academy videos as a resource. And then now we've got merchandise too. So we've gotten a lot of requests over the years for people who want the merchandise. They want to be proud of their blue collar leadership and reflect that. So we're opening up some of that as well.
Yeah, a lot of the t-shirts, we got a lot of cool t-shirts. I got a lot of them I wear, and unfortunately I don't get to wear them when we speak because you don't really typically speak in a t-shirt. But I really like those shirts, and on the back of the ones I'm talking about, it always says the blue collar workforce is the backbone of America. And Ria, you can tell, I remember most of them. You probably remember all of them, but the theme's kind of the same, but you got different pictures for different industries. Like if we have, I know we've got one with a track hoe, excavator. We got one with somebody welding on it. We've got the lineman. We got a bulldozer on there. What else we got? Big truck.
Yeah, we've got a big rig truck. We've got just sort of a handyman or plumber or carpenter one with, just a couple of tools like a hammer.
Pipe wrench, I think, on that one.
And then we just added a fireman one as well. So expanding that line to represent different industries, right? Different blue collar trades.
Yep. And if you were to want some of those shirts, especially for your team, you want multiple shirts, and we don't have one that really resonates with you, reach out. We might be able to create a new shirt, a new model that's got something that resonates with your crew or your industry. Sometimes you can't because they just don't look so clear, but a lot of times we could do something like that, Ria. I think that's what you did with the fireman, right?
Yeah. I had somebody who said, hey, this is great, but I want one that represents someone who's a firefighter. So that's what we did.
Yep. So I like to tell everybody real quick, whether you're a formal authority leader or whether you're not, we've got a free 2-hour course. It will help you pad your resume. If you're still listening, you're interested in leadership, without a doubt. You may or may not be a formal authority leader. Maybe you are, or maybe you're aspiring to be. But go check out the5typesofleaders.com. And 5, if you're listening, not watching it on the screen, 5 is the number 5. So the5typesofleaders.com. You can enroll right there. You'll go through a 2-hour course. There's 8 15-minute videos. There's a downloadable 8-page workbook that goes with it. And if you watch those videos from beginning to end, each one of them, at the end, you'll have the opportunity to download a certificate of completion and give that to your HR leader wherever you work. Give it to your boss. Let people know, hey, I'm growing and developing and investing in myself. And who knows where it'll lead you. Put it on your resume. Let people know, that's a course you've taken. If you take any of our other courses, again, if you're an aspiring leader, you're not there yet, invest in yourself. I learned a long time ago, Ria. I heard John Maxwell say, if you want to invest in yourself, why should anyone else? And
so true.
Because it came out of our checking account, our bank account, we started spending a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars over several years. I mean, probably over $100,000 invested in ourselves because of that one quote. Probably at some point I heard that, and then you and I started realizing we need to invest in ourselves more. And reading books is one way to do it. That's a cheap way to do it. Listening to podcasts is a free way to do it. Going through online courses is a way that's pretty low cost way to do it. One reason we've created those courses, when I was growing and developing and investing in myself, I love going through those kind of courses. The video course with a workbook with fill in the blank and the answer pops up on the screen. I'm pretty simple, but I really love those things. I can get that blank filled in. I can back up, rewind it, and watch it again, listen to it again, and really think about it. And I've had people tell me, blue collar guys who've listened to or watched some of our video courses, that this actually helps me get it. I get it at a whole different level doing it this way. So that's the 5typesofleaders.com. Go dive into that. Just check it out. You'll learn something. The first 3 videos is kind of giving you kind of an intro to leadership in case you're new to it. And then the last 5 videos in that course is really breaking down the 5 types of leaders. So you'll understand what they are. You'll understand what type do you report to. And if you are a formal authority leader, you need to be watching it and thinking about, what type am I?
What type am I? Yep.
What do we miss, Ria?
I think that covers it all.
One more thing. I think I missed something.
All right.
You got the Grace Everyday podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And that's for Christian wives of blue collar guys.
Yep, that's something new that I've launched this year, is just really a resource for the ladies, right? For the wives who are married to a blue collar guy, and the principles, of course, apply universally, right? But I like dialing them in to relevant examples for that. Again, those Christian wives who need encouragement, need inspiration, and talking about some of the issues and challenges that we deal with.
And it's good stuff. And you got some merch for that. I've been seeing you share some pictures of it. What's that slogan or logo on some of that merchandise you've got? It's pretty cool stuff.
Well, I have a lot of
about a woman praying behind every guy. How's it go?
Behind every blue collar man is a woman praying for him. Because, as wives, we're often sending our blue collar guy off to some often dangerous work, right? And I guarantee you, every single day, that wife is just sending up a prayer and saying, Lord, take care of him and bring him back home safely. Yeah,
there's a lot of blue collar guys that go to work and they don't come home because it is dangerous work. Sometimes it don't seem dangerous, but I mean, it is dangerous. Putting a car on the back of a tow truck doesn't seem that dangerous till you get hit by a car on the side of the interstate and you don't come home that day. I mean, there's all kind of examples. We could make a whole podcast about that, but check out Ria. You got a website for that, Ria? Where do they find that merch?
It's on our bluecollarleadership.com/store. There's just a different category for women, gifts for women.
Inside the bluecollarleadership.com store.
Yep.
The different categories.
Yeah.
So you'll see that one underneath the women's stuff. You got all kind of stuff in there too for the ladies.
Yep.
Outstanding. Well, I've enjoyed it, Ria. Thanks for joining me today and talk about it.
Anytime.
Even though I talked about most of it because most of them are my books, but we're going to come back and do another similar episode, or maybe it's going to take more because we got so many books, but we'll do this same thing to showcase some of our other books because a lot of people don't really know all these books we got. I can't even keep up with them myself.
Sure.
And so we're going to start doing that until we get through all of the books in our series, right? At some point, we'll be adding those. All right, folks. Anything else, Ria, before I close this out?
Nope.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out Ria's stuff. Check out the bluecollarleadership.com website in general. There's a lot of stuff there. If you're looking for a speaker in your organization or at your conference, or you want training for your team, go to the bluecollarleadership.com website. Right there at the front, at the top, you'll have two buttons. One says training, one's for speaking. Depending on which one you want, click on that and go down that I call it the rabbit hole for whatever that is, Ria. The rabbit hole for speaking or the rabbit hole for training, but you'll get a lot of additional support and resources there. So hope you enjoyed today's episode. Talk to you next time.